Alrighty. Cool. So, as you guys know, this week's review was titled Intermittent Fasting and Protein Pacing, an Improvement to Traditional Dieting. The original paper reviewed was titled Intermittent Fasting and Protein Pacing are superior to caloric restriction for weight and visceral fat loss by Arciero et al. 2023. So in this study, they had 41 healthy non-smoking males and females with overweight or obese. The subjects were all sedentary or lightly active, defined as less than 30 minutes of physical activity per week. That is really sad. But anyway, to be eligible to participate in the study, the subjects had to be between 30 and 65 years old. The average age was 50. And other descriptive averages were 205 pounds on average, 33 in terms of a BMI, and 44% body fat. So pretty high up there, I guess. Aside from that, the researchers matched the subjects according to their body weight and body fat percentage. That way, one group of subjects would not weigh more or have more body fat at the beginning of the study than the other group, which makes sense. And after the subjects were matched, the researcher randomized them into one of the two following diet groups for 8 weeks. One with intermittent fasting and protein pacing, and the other one traditional dieting, so just the same calories every single day. And that was an 8-week study. Strangely, which Bill also pointed out, they changed the intermittent fasting and protein pacing group throughout these 8 weeks. So split that group again. In the first half, they just had a group with 1 day per week of intermittent fasting, and the other group with 2. And then halfway through, they just combined them to the 1 day per week. When it comes to nutrition, on modified fasting days, the subjects consumed about 400 to 500 calories, which was approximately only 25% of their energy needs for the day, so 75% caloric deficit. On the non-fasting days, subjects were given a diet providing on average, because of course this was kind of matched depending on their maintenance, providing on average 1,350 calories for females or 1,700 calories for males per day, which I still think is really low. But the macronutrient distribution was 35% carbs, 35% fat, protein, and 30% fat. So a pretty decent distribution. And a relatively high meal frequency, 4 to 5 meals per day. So obviously that's more a snack size, I guess. That included approximately 30 grams of protein during each feeding. To verify adherence to the diet plan, subjects were required to report all food intake for 2 days before the diet started, so at baseline, and then again during the 4 weeks and week 8 of the diet. And all diets were isocaloric, so same calories, but on the weekly average or on the average in general, but not within the same macros, unfortunately, which in my opinion and also Bill's opinion, I guess a big downfall to this, just overall, because of course, as we know, protein helps preserve muscle mass. Another downfall, of course, being just the way that they reported their food, being super inaccurate, probably, or we don't know, but we can assume it's not very accurate anyway, and not very frequently either, if you just have 2 days at the beginning, 2 days in the middle, and 2 at the end, but it is what it is. So here we have a bit of an overview over the fasting protocol, meaning for the once per week average, about 1,500 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then a fasting day of only about 500 calories, and then 15, 15, 15, whereas the traditional dieting protocol was just the same across the week with 1,350 every single day. To verify that the subjects maintained a sedentary or low activity status during the study, they were required to wear an accelerometer during the study so that the researchers could measure how many calories were being burned each day. The researchers measured body composition via a bod pod at baseline and after the 8-week diet intervention. The bod pod was used to measure fat mass, body fat percentage, and fat-free mass. They also used a DEXA in the study. The DEXA scan was not used for duplicating the same overall body fat measures that the bod pod was used. Instead, the DEXA scan was used for its ability to measure visceral fat. So that's kind of interesting. I do like that they had them use the accelerometer just to kind of make sure that they maintain the same energy levels, more or less anyway. But yeah, of course, we all know the downfalls of potential downfalls anyway of a bod pod. So it's good that they also used a DEXA for different purposes, but nonetheless. So in the results, the intermittent fasting and protein pacing group increased their protein intake during the 8-week study, obviously. In contrast, the traditional dieting group decreased their protein intake, which makes sense if you put someone in a caloric deficit and just generally have them eat less. This can create an interpretation issues if the intermittent fasting and protein pacing group loses more body fat than the other diet group. So here again we see the averages. Their baseline intake was about 2,400, and then over the 24 weeks on average 1,450. Increasing their protein intake to 125, still not a ton, but nonetheless. And here going from 2,350 to 1,350 roughly, and the protein dropping to 70 grams per day, so super low. What we also see in this second graphic down here is that body weight. So we have the different groups, the orange being the intermittent fasting and protein pacing group. They dropped 7 additional pounds in body weight overall. They dropped 5 additional pounds in fat mass overall. And both groups dropped a little bit of fat-free mass, which makes sense. Yes, the intermittent fasting and protein pacing groups also dropped 1 extra pound of fat-free mass, but again, let's remember they dropped 5 extra pounds of fat mass as well. So, overall, that's where the 7 additional pounds in body weight comes from. So in terms of the DEXA, the whole body fat changes, the intermittent fasting and protein pacing group lost significantly more belly fat than the normal diet group. That's the fat that we want to lose, the visceral fat, most of anyway. Specifically, the intermittent fasting and protein pacing group reduced their visceral fat from 4 to 2.6 pounds, a loss of about 1.3 pounds. The normal diet group reduced their visceral fat from approximately 4 to 3.5 pounds, so about a pound less, losing about half a pound. The activity, when it comes to the activity, and here in quotes, both groups maintain similar amounts of physical activity, energy expenditure, about 350 per day, throughout the weight loss intervention. While this is true, there was no significant difference in calories burned during the study. This data had an interesting aspect. The intermittent fasting and protein pacing group increased their physical activity levels during the study by about 60 calories from 290 to 350 per day. So not enough to be statistically significant. In comparison, the normal diet group decreased their physical activity levels by about 25 calories. Again, this difference did not meet the threshold for statistical significance, but it still helps explain the body composition results observed in the study, even if marginally. I mean, 60 calories per day increase or 25 decrease, that's 85 calories difference. If we consider that they only consumed 1,350 on average, still a good amount. Furthermore, variables that were not held constant between the 2 diet groups that we should be considering. So the inclusion of the modified fasting days, so 2 and 1 and whatever, that wasn't constant. The protein intake wasn't constant between one or the other. The meal frequency wasn't constant. Again, the calories expended with physical activity. While these unmatched variables make a direct causation implication more difficult, still the study provides some excellent practical outcomes. Other limitations, nonetheless, of the study were, like I said, the food reporting, but nonetheless, a modified intermittent fasting plus higher protein seems superior to a lower protein diet that does not incorporate modified intermittent fasting days. So we don't really know what we can attribute what to. Is it the protein? Is it the intermittent fasting days? If so, which ones? And so on. And here are Bill's thoughts. So he attributes most of the success of the intermittent fasting and protein pacing group to the increase in protein intake. That's what he does not believe that spacing out the protein in this way was the reason for the success either. He questions whether adherence was the same between both groups, again, with satiation or anything, and he does think that the physical activity data is noteworthy. Lastly, he's of the opinion that intermittent fasting can still be a good way to restrict calories for some people. It may serve as a strategy if someone does not want to count calories, for example. And then we had another expert opinions thoughts, or actually two, Kristen and Maria, and they both they worked together, I guess, and they said intermittent fasting can help in some conditions, for example, with metabolic issues or gastrointestinal problems, but they warn that there is nothing magical about intermittent fasting. Regardless of how it is pursued, when put into practice by midlife women, which is their main target group anyway, intermittent fasting too often results in eating calories and animal protein, or protein in general, thereby creating physiological stress. They see this affecting hormones negatively, affecting satiety negatively, sleep, thyroid health, etc. And it's exacerbated if these women do HIIT training, especially fasted. So for most, a fasting window of a maximum of 12 to 14 hours is what they recommend. And now I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on the paper overall. Any takeaways, anything new that came to mind, or anything that you liked or didn't like?
Tiny little nitpicky thing for me was that they were doing a DEXA scan to look at the visceral fat. So why didn't they use that to look at body composition instead of the bod pod? Because when you do a DEXA scan, you get that data anyway. So that bugged me.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either, to be honest.
I guess, like, for me as a comment as a whole, sort of reinforcing what Alison said, it kind of, it was a study that seemed to have so much potential, but was just left down by weird things. Like, they just did really odd stuff, like what Alison just mentioned, and you just made you go, like, exactly what Alison said, like, why? You know, they had such a good study, and they just seemed to, in some respects, just spoil it. And, you know, as a result, we can't really take anything from the results of the study because it's so methodologically flawed.
Yeah, I thought, especially in regards to protein, I was like, why wouldn't you just match that? Or why wouldn't you have like three groups, one where it's random and then one where it's matched and then one with the intermittent fasting or whatever. I didn't really get that.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it makes you wonder because I mean they go through all this effort to set up a study design or get participants and so on, and then it's kind of like, you already have them there, they're already coming in, you're already collecting data, and then why don't you use it to the best of your abilities? But I guess we're not in their shoes, so yeah. Melissa, any thoughts your side?
Was just thinking that sometimes you're completely blind. I don't know what they were thinking because it seems pretty obvious to all of us. So I guess it should also be obvious for them. but I don't know. There must be something behind. So if you could talk to them, probably they will tell you, because we wanted to, I don't know, match real life conditions or not overwhelm them with too many things since they were eating very low calories. So we didn't want to, on top of that, force them to eat high protein. I don't know, but it doesn't make sense in such a, exactly as Mike said, it had potential to give us some light, but as it was done, there is no way to detangle what is due to the protein amount and what is due to what they were actually studying. So I would qualify it as useless.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I do have to admit I didn't look that closely into the details as to how they even instructed the protein group to get all that protein in the sense of the distribution, because again, like they didn't track with like MyFitnessPal or whatever. Did they just say, hey, make sure you have a whey shake with this and that meal, or make sure you have some chicken breast or like whatever, how did they actually ensure that they would have those 30 grams per meal? I didn't look into that. I'm sure
I
it would have
didn't
said
I
so.
didn't read it. I mean I read the paper, but I didn't read that they mentioned that.
Yeah,
So
me either. Yeah, me either. So yeah, I'd be curious to hear. But
I mean, probably if we would go and fetch the original paper, maybe there is more information because we are reading a summary and
yeah,
I was too lazy to go and grab the original
same.
paper
Yeah,
because I was disappointed and was like, I'm not really interested in digging deeper in understanding why you did what you did.
yeah, same. Tom, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't really like it for all the reasons that have already been stated. I don't know if sorry I was late, so I don't know if you've
Oh,
discussed part one of the study, like the
a
first paper that they
little
published.
bit. Yeah, I guess so.
So like to be specific, the IFP protocol, but they did one where they were fasting for 1 day and then one where they were fasting for 2 days.
Yeah,
Yeah, for 4 weeks, and basically they concluded from that IFP2 was better for
yeah,
losing more weight, reducing waist circumference, etc. But then their comments on why that happened were just so, I don't know, like just pointless.
yeah.
I'm trying not to be sort of harsh, but I don't know. They didn't acknowledge really the weakness of their own sort of like methodology, like the self-reporting. I think they did it 2 days at the start and at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was using questionnaires. Like you
Mm-hmm.
guys said, they didn't teach them how to track. They weren't tracking. They did give them a sample menu,
Yeah.
the IFP group, so that they could hopefully get protein in. And you can actually download it on the paper, but
Okay.
again, whether or not they used it, who knows? We don't know what they ate really. It's very likely adherence was all over the place.
Yeah.
And then the protein, like you guys have already said, it's just crazy. I actually wrote it down because I was like, what is this? It's like 15% of energy intake in the calorie restricted vs 35 from
Mm-hmm.
the like,
Yeah.
so yeah, overall I don't know how much you can really take from this.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
other than maybe protein pulsing and IF might be better for adherence for some people in some scenarios.
Yeah.
We
Great.
probably already knew.
I don't think I would ever say to a client or do myself, eat only 500 calories on certain days of the week. Like, especially somebody in their 50s, which was the average age of this study. Never would I tell anyone to do that. I think that that's just a bad idea.
I was just going to throw out that question, like what you guys would prefer, because Bill obviously stated at the beginning of the paper, he was like, "Oh, this excited me because he likes refeed days and he likes the prospect of having something different in a day where you can fit in a little bit more." I mean, the men in this study, or in some days with 1700 and so on, as opposed to constantly 1350 or whatever it was. But I personally am totally in the same boat. I would rather have the same exact numbers every single day, even if they feel more restricted, rather than having that low of a calorie allotment some days. I do actually personally know some people that really like alternate day fasting or whatever you call it. I mean, because this is just one model. Some people they do, you know, one day at maintenance, one day 500, one day at maintenance, one day 500, and they love it. They don't mind it. But I mean, some of them don't actually eat anything on those alternate day fasting, which I would never recommend for the protein reason as well. So I think Melissa, you've shared and what from what I hear
Menno,
that Menno likes that kind of approach.
protein,
Just protein,
calls
does he
it
call it protein sparring
protein
fast?
sparing modified fasting. So he
Yeah.
proposed it like strongly for all the clients, and we were supposed to actually prepare our exams taking in account protein sparing modified fasting, because he says that you get the days you train, you are entitled to have calories apart from protein, and the other days you just take your protein in to prevent catabolism and keep you satiated, but very, very few calories apart from protein. So there was a formula to calculate how many calories, but it's basically protein and a little bit more. However, he still defends, he says, I'm not talking here about protein shakes only, but like high quality protein, food, and some fiber. How to put that together, I don't really know, but his example was like a steak with a zucchini soup.
Okay, yeah. So
And then chicken breast with asparagus.
mhm.
Something like still whole food, not only protein shakes, but just proteins for the days that you're not training. So imagine that you train 5 days a week. You would propose 5 days where you have your normal calories a little bit higher, and then 2 days where you actually only get your protein in. And actually, especially for advanced trainees during contest prep, where your calories are very, very low, so that you will have the days you train, you actually have more calories, so you do have more energy for your training. You're not so deprived. And the days that you rest, since anyway you're flat, you are not entitled to any other food but your protein. I'm not saying that I agree, but this was the proposal, to say it like
Yeah, I mean, I do think that for some people it can work well. Like honestly, if they're like super busy people and then some people don't actually like eating. I mean, most people here like eating, but I actually know some people, some very strange people that are like, oh, I forget to eat or I don't like the prospect of eating. I'd rather just like drink all my food, or for me it could
Ben.
be all blend or whatever.
Ben
Blend. I don't
Ben doesn't like eating because
it's
every time he eats he has
so
pain.
of
So
course, yeah.
he is like, oh no, it's time to eat.
Yeah, it's super. I can't personally relate to that, but I have heard of that. So I could imagine that for people like that, it works.
I have to kind of zoom out and look at this because I'm solid in the camp of eating for health and living practices for health. I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not working on getting ultimate leanness for myself or my clients, but I can't I can't be comfortable with recommending a not eating or eating 500 calories a day with someone, particularly in this population, when we're looking at people who are overweight, obese, who have no experience with training or dieting or anything, and they're trying to lose weight to improve their health. I don't think you're building a good, healthy relationship with your body or with food by saying, don't eat 2 days a week. I just have a really hard time.
It feels like the language that I used was like, today you have worked out, so you are entitled food.
Yeah,
The
that's
days you don't work out, you're not allowed food. You don't
yeah.
deserve it.
No,
You were bad. So I don't like that. I don't like the language, and I don't like how it can turn into. Meno didn't say it like this, but it felt like, these kind of people that is like, okay, I'm gonna have a pizza tonight, so I'm gonna run in the treadmill
Yeah,
for
exactly. You need to
one and a
work
half
it up.
hours to earn the calories of the pizza. So I
Yeah,
think
very
it's kind of
dangerous.
tendency.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think anybody here would want to do that.
Where I see the case in Gen Pop client on weekends. So if you do have people who has like, probably, so no kids, let's imagine a person with no kids, and then is going to have a Friday going out with friends and Saturday social life. In that case, it could make sense to have during the week lower calories to save some calories for the weekend so
Yeah.
that you don't go completely crazy, but you still have some room for those extra calories that you socially going to eat. In that case, I would say it actually makes sense.
I mean, and that's more or less just refeed days, right? That we do implement anyway. But yeah, I get the gist for sure. But yeah, I think overall we all agree that the study design wasn't great, and like in terms of practical outcomes, if we can take anything away from it, is just protein is great. That that's about it.
Yeah, right. I do think though that again, putting aside Menno's sort of language that you've mentioned, which is problematic to say the least, definitely promoting disordered eating, in my opinion. But I think it can work, and certainly in the past I've used intermittent fasting just because it worked for me and my lifestyle. And I do wonder for people who have got less predisposition for, say, an eating disorder, where food restriction is a key trigger. Is it useful? I would imagine it could be, but that's something that you'd have to hash out with each individual and based on their goals and things, And yeah, for someone who's trying to maximize hypertrophy, that's like the absolute goal. Probably not a good idea, even with this like whole protein sparing thing. It's not really fasting at that point, is it? So, but anyway, point being, I think yeah, it's all about the individual, right? And like you said, if someone's right at the start, they've never dieted before in their life, maybe it's not a good idea, but then it could be as well, because maybe they might see really fast results from that. Because if you get a huge calorie deficit and then the fat loss and it gives them the motivation, and you can just have a short, quick, sharp diet that gets that fat loss, and then you go into a bit more of a diet focused on trying to build that.
I mean, that's a good point. And also, I mean, them being overweight or obese, their fat mass is going to be protective or somewhat protective of their lean body mass. So exactly for that reason, I would not recommend that for someone who is already very lean, because of course, what is your body, even with the protein, going to target more on the fasting days? Your lean body mass. But if you have that amount of fat mass, it's going to be more protective. So yeah, no, very, very good point. I like that actually.
Actually, Tom, those are the arguments that Menno was using. That number one, you should trust your clients, like otherwise Himalayan effect that you don't believe they can make it, so they cannot make it. But he said even newbies, if you are gonna go and teach them about nutrition, you can as well go hardcore with protein sparing modified fasting so that they see results and their diet period is shorter, and then they can go to maintenance and build.
Yeah. No, very good point.
No, I'm sure this. I can't remember. Did we do one recently about rate of loss? I think it was. It was like
Sorry,
I think
about?
I don't know if it was maybe just another one that was in one of the reviews that he sent to us, or whether we went through it. I can't quite remember, but it was about rate of loss and loss of like lean muscle mass in lean individuals.
Yes, yeah, like with highly trained people.
Yeah, elite natural weightlifters, and it was like 1% vs 2.5% of body weight per week. But surprisingly, they didn't actually lose any more lean body mass, which was
Okay.
very, very, very interesting because I didn't expect that.
Huh. Yeah, no, I don't think that was in a paper that we discussed in here, but it sounds interesting. For
I
sure.
don't remember, but it doesn't mean anything.
It's I'll put it in the chat, but it was in the review. So I think it might have just been in one of the papers that we reviewed, and then it was the other paper because like usually there's two papers, right?
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, I'll put it on.
Oh, cool, thank you.
No worries.
Any other thoughts on this this paper and this review? Okay, cool. Yeah, I actually just, I know that some of you are like wanting to go to bed or whatever, so if you want to hop off, that's cool. I just have like a few questions prepared that I stumbled upon today in like some kind of more like gratitude journal. So if you guys want to stay on to go through some of them, feel free. Otherwise, also throughout, feel free to hop off. So I'm basically going to read some of them out, and you can, you know, make notes for yourself and we can share, or you can just make notes for yourself and think about it for yourself. But yeah, I thought that they were quite interesting and just kind of made you think a little bit. So the first one was for what in your, well, first of all, also corresponding to my post today, but for what in your life do you feel most grateful for right now? Like you guys can just pause and think or write it out. I'm going to go through the questions and then go through them again. So
Can you read it again? Because I got lost. I was searching for a pen.
yeah. For what in your life do you feel most grateful? So try not to make it like a huge list, just one or two things. Okay, next question. What have you dreamt of doing and why aren't you doing it? Next question. What so far is the greatest accomplishment of your life?
Super easy questions.
Not deep at all. No, you can take more time to think about it right now. I just want you to write them out if you want to reflect on them or not. Not quite as deep, but if you could choose one dinner guest, alive or dead or whatever, who would it be to have one dinner with? Okay. And last one. If you could wake up with one quality or ability tomorrow, what would that be? So yeah, we can all take a few minutes to think about some of them, because I haven't actually written these out or haven't properly pondered upon them either. But then yeah, maybe we can at least share like one or two or so. So yeah, feel free to think away for a few minutes. If you've pondered on like 2 or 3 of them, then just put like a thumb in the chat box. Give a couple more minutes. Okay, cool. Let's start, and I guess just kind of going across the room, you can start by sharing whichever one spoke to you the most, or you feel like sharing the most. That'd be awesome. So anyone who wants to go first.
I'll share one really quickly. It's a little bit, so it was actually the last question when I think you said, if you could wake up with one ability, what would that be? This might sound really superficial, but the first thing that came into my head was to have the power of Captain America.
That's pretty cool.
That would be cool. Just because
Yes.
it's just cool, but also just to add a bit of deeper meaning to it as well. Captain America is my favorite superhero because of his nobility and just his sense for justice and his sense for kind of, respect, doing things for the right reason, putting other people above himself and service. And so he's my kind of moral, my kind of like idol or person who I want to be like. So even if it wasn't for the superficial superhero superpowers, it would be for that as well.
I like it. Very nice. Well, one that came to mind for me on that one would be to fly. And I mean, you top that because he can fly and do a bunch of other stuff as well. So, nice. Awesome. Yeah, who wants to go next? And it can be a different question, can be the same, doesn't matter.
For the same question, I would like to have self-control.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, okay. In regards to something specific or just in general?
General. I had today a day where I found myself in front of a trillion of croissants in the morning, and I ate 5. Me being me after this journey, still having 5 croissants in the morning, it's like, and I also lost it on a yellow bed in the afternoon, and all that will boil to self-control.
Yeah, good point. I like it. Thank you for sharing. Nice.
My answer to several of them is the same. So what am I most grateful for would be my kids and my family that my husband and I built together over the last 20 plus years. I'm trying to remember what the questions were.
Your greatest accomplishment, I assume, is probably
greatest accomplishment is also the family that we've built together and the life that we've built together. And things that I've dreamed about. So one of the things I have dreamed about is doing some more traveling. Why am I not doing that? Because of my children and my family. It's not a good time in life to be just traveling the world. Also, I have another piece to that, and that is something that I started in 2004. We've talked about this in the past. In 2004, I went back to grad school to get my master's degree in counseling psychology with the goal to become a marriage and family therapist. And I ended up leaving the program because I was still working full-time in my corporate job. And I couldn't leave my job and see clients and finish my schoolwork. So that's something that's been on the back burner for 20 years somehow. So that's been heavy on my mind again lately. And the reason I haven't pursued that again is because I've left my corporate job eventually to be home raising my kids. So yeah.
a good reason though, since it is also the thing that you have most appreciation for. So yes.
Yes, not a single doubt and for a single second of all these years. Yeah.
That's lovely. Thank you. Anyone else?
I can. Oops. Tom, go.
I was it might be a bit boring, but just because everyone has already answered the last question, I just thought it'd be really cool if I could just recall anything and everything
Like
as and when I wanted to, like a computer, which hopefully one day we're going to do when Elon does his
become
little.
AI plus emotions and stuff, hopefully. So yeah.
Imagine how much time and effort we'd save, honestly. Oh,
But would we be happier? That is the question, since also we need to go through struggle in order to actually be a bit more happier. So, we don't know.
yes, because I could go and struggle in creative endeavors instead of trying to
I,
memorize.
I guess that's a good point, but also, would it actually feel special if everyone could do it? Because then it would just be normal. So maybe, 1,000 years ago, people were saying, "Oh, I wish I could just do what we do now," and we don't even realize it. So, like if everyone can do
Oh,
it, it
yeah,
becomes the normal, and then you're just like, oh, whatever.
totally. It's like having food abundance.
Yeah, that's right. But no, cool thought. I like it. Any other question or any other thoughts on this
I
one?
wanted to share because Alison did, and mine answers are very similar to yours. So what I'm more grateful for is the health of my boys. That they are healthy and thriving. They are pain in the neck, but that is because they are healthy and thriving. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother so much and be so creative and destructive. And not only destructive, but that's what it sticks more. And also, the reason why having accomplished what I dream of, which is live in Spain, is because of the boys and Ben. I'm not allowed to leave. If I leave, I will have to break my family. So same. That's why I thought about it. Like Alison, it's a circle.
Yes, makes
They are what makes me proud of and grateful and the center of my life. But this is also the reason why I'm rooted here, like it or not.
it
Some
made
days
it made the sacrifice worth it, even though that's the biggest, not regret, but yeah, the
Yeah.
unfulfilled dream. It made the sacrifice worth it. I like it.
And for dinner, I would like to have Isabel Allende with me.
Who, sorry? Oh,
Isabel
the
Allende.
author.
Mm.
Oh, cool.
She's my favorite author from the whole life. I've read all her books, and I really would like to sit with her because she caresses you with words. She finds the best, so you can tell a story, but she tells it with some words that are so beautiful, that are like music to your ears, and I love it. And I'm grateful that I actually speak Spanish so that I can read it in its original language. I understand that all the colors that are in between the words. So I would like to have her for dinner.
Beautiful.
And in general, about achievements, I would say what I'm more proud of is the muscles I have in my body, because you cannot buy them. You cannot put them on. Well, yeah, now with surgery, you can actually do pretty much everything, but I've worked very hard for them. And even if I have extra skin that I have to work with myself to accept, because it's not going to change, my muscles are mine, and I have worked very hard to have them. And that is something that is mine, and it belongs to me, and it's just me, myself, and I. And in general in life, I am also extremely proud of my boys and how smart they are and how sweet they are. So it all goes around the same thing.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, I like the book author as well. So for my guest, I would have chosen Marcus Aurelius from well, obviously Emperor, but also Meditations, etc. And I think it would be so interesting, like even just in the sense of the time that he lived in, and then what made him a quote unquote good man, and what wisdom he would impose aside from the meditations and all that. I think it would be super interesting. Yeah, you too. What would be your dinner guest? Maybe we can finish off with that question.
That's a hard one. I don't have one in mind, but I like yours. I love the idea of someone coming from so long ago who had wisdom then that's still applicable to today. and I just want to see the world now through their eyes and hear what they
Mhm.
have to say about it.
Oh, yes. Tom, did you have an answer to that question or not quite yet?
Uh, so that being who would I have dinner with?
Yes, yes, dead or alive.
Very, very close to you, to yourself. Yeah, it was. I think I'm doing it justice. I think his name was Antonius Pius.
Uh-huh.
Marcus Aurelius is, yeah, the dude who adopted Marcus Aurelius, and then much of Meditations was dedicated to him. So yeah,
Oh,
'cause he
so
sounds, it
I
sounds like
mean,
a
is
great guy.
he's I assume he's considered a Stoic also, or does he not like properly fall into that era
No, he doesn't really fall into
or
as
school, I
being a
guess?
Stoic, really. No, but Marcus um, takes a lot of time to describe him, and he appears as one of his like people at the beginning of Meditations that he dedicates his respect to, and apparently in Roman times that was also like a big thing to do that.
Like a
So,
mentor or something like that. I mean,
yeah, so Marcus was his history, as far as I understand it. I'm certainly not a historian, but he was I think he was adopted initially by Nero,
mhm.
who history tells us was a terrible, terrible emperor, horrendous anger, temper problems, was prone to
Lack
overindulgence,
self-control.
lacked self control. Yeah, the epitome of everything that we don't want to be, I think. And then when Nero died, yeah, it was Antonius who then took over. And from Marcus's writings as like a 16, 17-year-old, he describes him as everything that you want an emperor, but also a man and a father, etc., to be.
Wow.
So I think, yeah, I'm just very curious because he sounds like the perfect person. And maybe that's because it was a teenager who would, adored him. But yeah.
Well, I like it. I hope that we all get to like have dinner with these people in our dream tonight, or it's sometime in the future, post this life, whatever.
Lisa, do you have an answer to the second question? I'm curious about it.
Which one was the second one?
That was what you haven't achieved in your life and why.
So in it or
What do you dream of?
what did I used to dream of? Yes, so for me, I used to dream of moving to the US. I don't anymore actually, but that was my goal for probably like 10 years from like when I was 16 on to I don't know. But because of like immigration stuff and then of course being stuck in New Zealand for some time, it kind of got dispersed. And now especially since I returned a few times this year, I was like, no, this is not me anymore. But it used to be a dream of mine for a while. My question to my greatest accomplishment, or my answer to my greatest accomplishment, was actually leaving security and the life that I thought I would make me happy in New Zealand. You know, you have a house, you have a set job, you have a marriage and whatever, and still yeah, embracing the fear of venturing out of that. I would say that that's yeah, feels like my biggest accomplishment. And for what in my life am I most grateful of? For me, that's freedom. It's one of my biggest values. And yeah, I'm truly grateful, like in all aspects, in the sense of being able to create my own schedule, in the sense of traveling around for the most part, of course, also peace and so on is kind of part of that. So yeah, that's my answers to those questions. I think that was all. Yes. But yeah, thanks guys for sharing a little bit. I think it's interesting just getting to know one another a bit more. So thanks for being open to that because I mean not everyone has an open mind to questions like this, but yes, I love it. Cool.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure. It's nice.
yeah, I like it too. So thank you. And I
It also feels nice. I mean, I really like that we talk about science, but I also like this part of like reflecting a little bit because it's not something that I tend to do. Just don't find the mental space to do it. So I'm grateful for that also. I like it.
thanks for the feedback. Of course, I like hearing that too because yeah, this group is really what we make it. So thanks for being part of it.
I
And
love
yeah.
the perspective from all over the world too. That's really cool.
Very good point. We are an internet, even though we're small, we are a very international group.
But yes, I don't think it. Well, yeah, I mean, Tom, you both are from the same place, but apart from that, we are extremely diverse.
Yeah, yeah. All we're missing is like some. I mean, if Tammy is here, we have a little bit of Vietnamese influence. We might be missing the African continent just a tiny bit. I've only dipped the tip of my little toe into that one, so it doesn't actually count. But
You have
yeah,
pictures in there, so it counts.
there we go. Nice. Well, I hope everyone has a nice rest of their day or evening, and I will see you all next week.
See you then.
Bye.
Ciao.